Sponsored by RevenueCat. With a few lines of code, RevenueCat gives you everything you need to build, analyze, and grow in-app purchases and subscriptions without managing servers or writing back-end code. Find out more at revenuecat.com. Swift Playgrounds 4 lets you build and ship a complete iOS app from scratch right on your iPad. You get to draw upon Apple's powerful SwiftUI framework. You can pull in libraries other people have written, and you can also, if you want to, move your project over to your Mac and continue in Xcode, Apple's full-blown code editor. Now in this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through building your very first app with Swift Playgrounds 4 for iPad, where you'll be able to show pictures of your friends and family, and tapping one of them will play a sound. It's just for fun, but along the way you'll learn a lot, and also make use of other built-in software on your iPad. Now this tutorial is aimed at beginners, so you don't need any prior Swift experience. But to follow along, you do have to install Swift Playgrounds 4 from the App Store. That's it though. You don't need Xcode, you don't need a Mac. In case you're curious, I'm running here on Apple's Magic Keyboard with an iPad Pro with iOS 15.2. Okay, to get started, press the new document icon in the top left corner, or choose App under Get a Playground, like this. Then tap on it to open it up. It'll be called My App by default and have a random icon. I'll show you later on how to change those. So when it's editing, you'll see on the left here all your code. And on the right is a live preview that shows your actual code running. Now I expect the starter code will change slowly over time, but that's okay. I want you to delete almost all of it. Leave only a small amount behind. So I'll delete this VStack here, leave the hello world, and delete this brace down here, leaving just text hello world. And on the right, you'll see immediately it's updated to remove the picture, just leaving hello world. So it really is live. And later on, you'll see it's interactive too. Now, our remaining code does several things here. First, it tells Swift we want to bring in the SwiftUI framework. Now, Swift is the programming language that we use to build our apps. But SwiftUI, that's a whole set of tools that give us buttons, images, sliders, and other common UI controls. It then creates a piece of UI, which in SwiftUI we call a view. In this case, we're calling the new piece of UI our content view. You'll make lots of views as you work with SwiftUI, but each one needs to have its own name. Inside there, it says the body of our view, the thing we're going to draw to the screen, or itself returns some kind of SwiftUI view. That means our content view will show other pieces of UI inside. Finally, it says the UI you want to show is the text hello world. Now, we're writing a lot more code in here over the course of this video, but first I want to spend a few minutes just noodling around with the basics so you have a better grasp of what's going on. We can customize the way our text looks by adding modifiers to it. There are lots of these built right into SwiftUI, and you'll often find yourself using several at once to get exactly the right effect. For example, we could try adding some modifiers to our text here. We could say, I want this text to have a font that is a large title font, and it gets bigger and bolder straight away. Or I could say I want a foreground color here of .blue, and bang, it's blue. So we've now got a large, slightly bold blue piece of text. You can also control the background color of the text by adding another modifier. For example, we could say I want to have a white foreground color for our label, but a blue background color using .background.blue. Now there are two things you'll notice here. First, we set the foreground color by saying foreground color, but the background color just by saying background. This is intentional. Foreground colors are always just simple colors, but backgrounds can include all sorts of other things, like images, for example. Second, notice how the blue background fits almost exactly around the edge of the text. SwiftUI knows the correct size of the text, including its natural line spacing allowance, and it makes sure the background color is the same size for that text. Now, if you wanted to make the background color a little bit bigger before the text so it sits bigger around it, ask SwiftUI to include some padding before the background, like this. I'll say .padding, and then background blue. And now you'll see the blue background extends beyond the text, which is nicer, I think. Now you can specify where you want the padding to be placed by saying, I want padding to be vertical only, for example. But for now, let's just stick with padding on all edges. Now, many SwiftUI modifiers can be applied multiple times, causing them to stack up and create interesting effects. For example, we could apply more padding and a second background color, then even more padding and a third background color. So we'll say after our background blue, there's extra padding, then background, and this time I'll use a different one, which is mint, and then some more padding, and then background of dark green. And now it sort of stripes out the way. Now, tip for you, all these color types, green, mint, blue, white, and so forth, they're built right into SwiftUI, but you can create your own color types too. So now you've seen the basics of SwiftUI, I want to start moving over to the actual app we're going to build. In iOS, two of the most common view types are called list and navigation view. One represents a scrolling list of data like you see in settings, and one provides the ability to have a title at the top and optionally to show more information when something's tapped. Now you can place all kinds of data inside your list, but let's start nice and simple for now. We'll get rid of all this code and say there's a navigation view with a list inside, and in there will be our friend text hello world. Now you'll see our text appears on the right with a sort of, in my case, middle grey curved box around it to highlight the fact that this is a list row. There's also a lot of space above it, and that's space for our title of our navigation view, which is empty right now. We can provide our own title by adding another modifier, this time attaching it to the list. So we'll say this thing has a navigation title of friend face with only two Fs, the name of our application. Now we're going to add some more to that in a moment, but first I'd like to try swiping around in our preview because it's fully interactive. You'll see you can scroll down here a little bit and the friend face title kind of grows as it stretches downwards. But also you can go the other way and make it shrink away into a small bar saying friend face at the top like that. This is exactly how all the rest of iOS behaves, and we get it all basically free with SwiftUI, with just that little bit of code there. Now this preview is our actual real code running, but Swift Playground also has a play button in the top left corner. And it'll run the app full screen as if it was running on the iPad from the App Store all by itself. If you press it now, you'll see something interesting happens. Let's try it out. All being well, you'll see here our list, our navigation view, all sit on the left-hand corner of the screen. The whole right-hand side is empty. Now this happens because the system thinks our list is designed to let users choose from a bunch of data. So that when they choose something from a list, they see more details on the right-hand side. Something like how settings works, or how mail works, or how messages works, and many others. It's a standard way of working on iPad. Now in this app, we don't want that behavior. Our list is everything in this program. We'll ask it to take up all available space. This is done with a different modifier, this time attached to the navigation view. So you want to exit app playback and head back to our content-view.swift file. To do that, look for the orange and white Swift logo in the top right corner of your screen, tap on that, then press stop. And you're back at your code again. And now attach a new modifier to the navigation view itself, not to the list. We'll say this is navigation view style.stack. And a stack navigation view style tells SwiftUI this thing should take the full space of the screen. Like that, it now runs edge to edge, which is much better. Okay, let's go back to our code again. Now inside our list, we have this single piece of text, hello world. But really we want to show lots of pieces of text. One for each friend or family member we have inside our app. And we can do this by using another kind of view called for each. It's one word, capital F, capital E, for each. But it needs to be given two important pieces of data to be able to do its job. First, we've got to give it a list of items we want to show. And it will feed us one item at a time from that list. And it'll ask us to convert that into a SwiftUI view that can be shown in the list. So here's one name. What do you want to do with it? Second, we've got to give it a way to identify each item in our list uniquely. Otherwise, SwiftUI has no idea which piece of data should belong to which list row. Now, both of these take some new learning, but only a little bit. The first new thing is that we need to provide a list of names outside of the body view. Remember, this whole view body here, this thing, that's the thing that should be drawn onto the screen. What we're making now is just some data, so it's outside of the view body. We'll say our names is square bracket, quote, and I'm going to put some names in here. So we've got Paul, we've got Sophie, and we've got Charlotte here. And this creates a new value called names, and it contains an array of text: Paul, Sophie, and Charlotte. These arrays hold several values in one place, and they're exactly the kind of thing for each likes to be given. The second new thing is our for each view. Remember, this wants to be given a list of data we want to show, which for us is our new names array. But it also has to be told how to identify each item in the array uniquely. What makes each one unique? Now, in our names array, we have Paul, Sophie, and Charlotte, which means every name is unique. Other than that text itself, Paul, Sophie, Charlotte, there's nothing in there about the items that makes it unique. There's no ID numbers attached, for example. They just have the text itself. So when it comes to telling SwiftUI what makes each piece of data unique, we use a special value, \self, which means we're promising the item itself is unique. Now, if later on you add extra names that aren't unique, you'll hit a problem, but it's good enough for now. And so I want you to adjust your list view to this. Inside here, there's a for each, passing in the names we made with the identifier of \self. That's what makes it unique. Then give me one name coming in and use that inside a new text view showing that name. And you're going to see Paul, Sophie, Charlotte appears right now. So our preview shows all three items just as we wanted. Let's just pause and break down the new code again, nice and clear so you understand what's going on. We still have a list of items, just like before. Except now we're specifying them using an array of data rather than hard coding all our text views by hand. Second, we've told our for each view to create its items from the names array. And also, it can identify each item in there uniquely because each item is unique. Identify each one by itself. Then, for each will hand us one name from the array at a time and ask us what we want to do with it. That's this name in part. It's literally saying, here's one name into our list row. What do you want to do with it? And in this case, we're showing that name in a text view, which is why we can see the names one per row in our list. Now, having data in an array is much nicer than typing it in by hand because now we can modify our array to see more items in our list. We could say I want to have Paul, Sophie, Charlotte, and then Adrian and Noval and Alan. And then it will reload that and show those names as well. Now, one of the great things about building software on your iPad is that there are so many other apps you can lean on to bring in extra content. Here, we're going to bring in some photos, but later on we'll use Apple's voice memos to import some sounds too. First, photos. You want to open up the sidebar for Swift Playgrounds and press this Add Item button over here. It just says one here, this thing here. And press that to import things into your project. In this case, I'm going to choose Photo. And it will show me photos from my photo library, which you can see is basically my kids and my dogs. And go ahead and choose now a photo from your photo library of yourself or a friend or a family member or a school enemy or who knows what, right? This is your chance to bring in one of these people. I'm going to tap this picture of my eldest daughter, Sophie, and it'll bring that in here into Swift Playgrounds. And you'll see it calls it on the left here, it calls it image asset. That's the default name of it. Now you can fix that, you can rename it to something meaningful by just pressing and holding on it and then choosing rename. And I'll call this one Sophie, which makes more sense. I'll then do it again, photo, and bring in a picture of my younger daughter, Charlotte. There she is. And again, I'll rename Charlotte, from image asset to Charlotte. Finally, I'm going to bring in one more picture, but this time I'll do it live because it shows you an interesting problem you're likely to face. This might be a bug in Swift Playground, so perhaps by the time you follow this video in a month or two, it's no longer an issue, but right now is an issue, so you want to know about it. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and launch the camera app on my iPad over here, and then flip the camera around. There's me recording this on my microphone right here, very stylish. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of me live right now on my iPad. I can use it in my app. So there we go. There's my new picture. I'll then go out of there, back into Playgrounds, and bring that picture in. Now, I'm doing it this way because obviously, pictures of me are great. No. It shows an interesting quirk. So here's a picture of me right now. And I'll bring it in, and look, I'm in Australia. No, I'm upside down, which isn't ideal, right? And this happens because most phone cameras store their picture in whichever orientation was used when the camera is taken. It's just like this is the way around it always is, in one fixed way. But then it stores a hidden flag in the file to remember which orientation should be used when actually drawing it to the screen. And in this case, the orientation is being ignored by Swift Playgrounds. So seeing the picture the way it is internally, if that makes sense, the internal way the picture pixels actually are. To fix this, step one, press and hold, then delete the picture. And we'll correct it, don't worry. All you gotta do is get iOS to make any kind of change to the picture, anything at all. And so if I go to the photos again on my iPad, over here somewhere, there we go, and select that obviously awesome picture of me, and then make any change. Like I crop it like a little bit like that. I've cropped it fractionally. Press done now. It's rewritten the pixels. Like that tiny change has rewritten the pixels to make it that way around for real. And so when I go back to Playgrounds and bring in that picture again, there it is. It's going to appear right way up. So it's a small change, any change, change the brightness or contrast or crop it slightly, whatever you want to, and it'll actually work much better. So now it's in correctly and working fine now, and a picture of me, you've seen it for real taken. I will press and hold and rename this thing to be Paul. We have 3 pictures of people now, which is more enough to continue with, but I'm going to add one bonus picture because, obviously I love my dog so much. Let's bring in this picture of Luna in the car at her upside down again. So let's go ahead and fix that. Give me a moment. Photos. Where's that Luna picture? There it is. So I'll go to here and I'll crop Luna a little bit. Again, any change actually works here, so it doesn't really matter which one you go for. So let's choose crop and then do that kind of change and then press done. Boom. Back to Playgrounds, zap the asset and delete and then re-import it. Photos, that one there. And there we go, my lovely pooch. So it's a really small thing to do, and I'm sure it'll get fixed imminently. But right now, watch out for that if you're doing it live. Anyway, this is Luna, my dog, picking up my kids from school. Well, not driving the car, she was in the car. I'll call that one Luna. And now, I'm going to go ahead and close these tabs at the top here showing our pictures. Press these X buttons. You can go away, you can go away, you can go away, and you can go away. Back to my code again. I'll hide this sidebar so we can see our code more clearly. And I'll change our names array to match that list of pictures. So goodbye, Adrian, Naval, and Alan. I'll just say it's going to be Paul, Sophie, Charlotte, and Luna with a U. There we go. And that matches our names on the left. Charlotte, Luna, Paul, and Sophie match that names array intentionally. And now for the best bit. Rather than just showing text down here on this side part, we're instead going to show pictures. We can bring in those pictures we just added to our thing. So I'll say, don't just show text of name, instead do image of name. And you'll see that happens. And it's probably a bit strange, perhaps not what you expected. This happens because our pictures have been shown at their original size, which is way too big for our little iPad preview here. We can bring them down in size by attaching 2 modifiers to the image itself. One to let SwiftUI resize the image, and one to make them scale down so they fit the available space they have. So I'll say image name is resizable and scaled to fit. And now you'll see we have these pictures right now, Paul, Sophie, Charlotte, and Luna, just stacking up inside our list here. Now remember earlier I mentioned we have this little gray box around our pictures, this thing sort of around it here. It looks really good when you have text in there or text plus pictures and so forth. It makes the rows look visually distinct against the background. But here, it'd look much nicer if our pictures didn't have that. So we went more space around them. And we can get that by changing our list out and instead making it a scroll view. Just like that one change there. And with that, bang, they go edge to edge. Really, really simple to do. We get a much nicer layout, I think, here. Now, SwiftUI's list is for scrolling tables of data like having the settings app, for example, or when you're choosing a contact to speak to in messages. But when you want something your own custom layout like here, a simple scroll view works better. It's much easier. We can put whatever we want in there. Now, speaking of putting whatever we want in there, we can actually add a bit of style into our pictures. We could say, scale them to fit, but then give them a very gentle corner radius of like 25 points or so. So round the edges, and then add a little bit of padding horizontally. So they stay away from the left and right edges, or I should say the leading and trailing edges. Nice. Now in this app, we'll be showing faces belonging to various friends and family, but we're going to play sounds when they get tapped. We've handled pictures, but how do we make them do something when tapped? Well, this is handled using another kind of SwiftUI view called a button, which is made with two pieces of information. First, some code to run when the button's tapped. And second, a label for the button, what you want users to see on the screen. Now for us, the label is this whole image bit of code. That's what we want to be tappable on the screen. So we can start by putting that inside a button. We can say our for each now contains a button. When it's tapped, do something, who knows what. And the label for that is going to be this whole image code right here, like that. So it's the same result. This thing here looks the same, but now they're buttons. They'll do things when tapped. See, they sort of fade when I tap them with either my finger or with the little trackpad. Now this question mark line over here, this thing is called a comment. When you start a line with these double slashes, it tells Swift to ignore that line completely. Comments are really useful to remind yourself how code works later on. But here, it's a placeholder for our button's action. What do we want to happen when each button is pressed? Well, here, when you're just building your app, you might want to print a little message to the screen. And you can do that by replacing your comment with this code. I want to print, I'll say \parens name was tapped, like that. Now this \parens name thing, this is a very grandiose name in Swift. It's called string interpolation. And it means I want to take the name I was passed in, Paul, Sophie, Charlotte, and Luna, and put that directly into my text. And so when I press on Paul up here, it will remember that Paul was tapped, or Sophie was tapped, or whoever was tapped right there. I'll press play now and see what happens. Let's see if you help us see our code run, all being well. It's having a little think. Come on, you can do it, Swift Playgrounds. There we go. There's me nice and big. Tap on my face. And if I go actually up to here and choose show console, it'll be more helpful perhaps. There we go. So here's our output. Paul was tapped, Paul was tapped, Paul was tapped. And then down here, Sophie was tapped. And then Charlotte was tapped. And then, of course, Luna was tapped. There's the smiliest dog in the world. I'll leave her right there. Anyway, so we can see the output from our messages right now are appearing in this console at the bottom. And you can bring up full screen if you want to sort of see everything that's happening right now, or keep this more toast approach, which is there by default. Anyway, so we're seeing what's happening. We're printing a message to our screen saying so-and-so was tapped, which is a starting point, but it's not great. What we want here is to have sounds for our people that play when they're tapped. And this means we've got to start by importing some audio files we can work with. Now, I've already made some sounds for Sophie, for Charlotte, and for Luna. So I'll import those now. I can press plus and then insert from, and it'll open the Files app. So I can choose, so here's Luna's sound. And then I'll go into here and choose insert from. I'll scroll through and find Sophie. And then I'll insert again. And then I'll bring in, oops, there's Charlotte. There we go. So I have all three of these names pulled in, and that's straight from my iCloud files, just like the rest of your iCloud files in your iPad. Now, with that done, Swift Playground can go and show us what these sound like. You can go ahead and tap on Charlotte here, then tap play, and it'll play back her sound.
Hello.
There we go. So you're hearing Charlotte play or hearing Sophie play.
Meh.
That's exactly how she sounds, by the way. So each of those, by not pure coincidence, match the same names as my photos. So we have Charlotte, Charlotte M4A, Luna, Luna M4A, and Sophie, Sophie M4A. There wasn't one for me, but that's okay because I can go ahead and record one by launching voice memos on my iPad and recording something. So I'll go back to my iPad again, go way over to the right here where I have my apps ready to go, choose voice memos, and then press record. Hello, Swift Playgrounds. There we go. So this thing, I'll just call that Paul, sensible name for it. I'll then press this share button up here, and I'll put this thing over to files, the iCloud files on my iPad. So I'll bring that into here and then save it there on my iPad. It's fine. And once that's done, I can get to it elsewhere. So I can go back to Playgrounds again and then bring my new audio file that's recorded in voice memos over here. So I'll bring it in, insert from files, and then look for my new one. There's Paul. In it comes, and it should sound just like me. Hello, Swift Playgrounds. Amazing. Technology. Anyway, so now I've got a bunch of pictures and a bunch of sounds. How do we actually make it to play one sound when an appropriate picture is tapped? Well, SwiftUI doesn't have a built-in way of playing sounds. You know, the UI part of SwiftUI means it does user interfaces, not audio. But that's okay. And in fact, it's all part of my cunning plans. It gives me a chance to show you a real power of Swift Playgrounds. You can bring in code someone else has written straight from code sharing services such as GitHub. In this case, I already wrote, by pure coincidence, a free framework that makes it easy to play audio in SwiftUI. And we can bring it in here and start using it. To do that, go back to the Add button here and choose Swift Package. Now the URL you want to have is https://github.com/2straws/subsonic. That's the name of my package. I'll press return. Swift Playgrounds will fetch that from GitHub and tell me what I want to do with it. In our case, I'll go ahead and press add to project to bring that into my project ready to go. And you'll see it appears down here in the list of packages important already. Here's Subsonic down here with its code and so forth, ready to go. So I've got that thing now ready to go. I can start using it straight away. And if ever in the future I decide I don't actually want that, just long press on Subsonic and choose remove package dependency. Here though, I very much do want it. So I'm going to go ahead and close down these M4A files on my iPad, head back to content view. I want to pull in all of the Subsonic framework ready for me to use. In this instance, it means up next to import SwiftUI, I want to add Subsonic. Now, in my case, I'll put that before SwiftUI, import Subsonic. It's not required. It can go afterwards, but I prefer to keep it alphabetical. Doesn't matter though. That's the first change. And the second change here is we want to make sure we play that sound when our button is tapped up here. So we'll say, don't just print name was tapped. Instead, I want to play the sound. In our case, I use string interpolation, that name.m4a, and that matches the audio name for the picture. So remember, name will be Paul, that's our image name, and Paul.m4a, that's going to be our sound name that matches Paul here. And that's it. That's all it takes to make Subsonic playback sounds right here. So I can go ahead and tap on me. Hello, Swift Playgrounds. Or Sophie.
Meh.
And then there's, of course, Charlotte.
Hello.
And finally, the one you're waiting for, let's face it, it's Luna.
Ooh.
There you go. And that's it. So we can now tap faces in our project to play back names, or of course tap multiple times.
Meh.
My kids are going to hate me when they see this video. Anyway, We're almost done here, but so far we've mostly been using this little preview area on the right-hand side of our code. But when you press play, as you saw earlier, it's not a great experience. You sort of see these gigantic pictures of people on the screen. It looks a bit strange, like a huge picture of me, huge picture of Sophie, Charlotte, and so forth, like that. I mean, obviously, that's a great app right there. What's not to like? But we can do better, right? In our case, this is how folks are going to see it on the App Store. You'll see it full screen like this. It's not a great experience, so we're going to do better. We'll take a more scalable approach. Rather than just using one picture at a time in our layout, we'll instead show a grid of pictures. This takes 2 steps. So I'm going to exit my code and go back to the content view again. The first step is to tell SwiftUI how many columns we want to have in our grid, what kind of configuration they have. And so, next to our names array up here, let's hide the sidebar again. Next to our names array up here, I'm going to say I want to define some columns, and it will be an array of columns. In our case, it'll be only one item in there, but still an array. It'll be a grid item, and this thing has a number of options. Do you want fixed size grids, flexible grids, whatever? I'm going to ask for an adaptive grid item. I don't mind how much space you take up, how many items in the column you have, just adapt automatically. But you've got to have a minimum size of 250 points on the screen. That's the absolute minimum you can work with, is 250 points on the screen, like that. So we've got one column, one grid item, adaptive, at least 250 points. It can be bigger than that. It can stretch up as much space as it wants to fill the row, but no less than 250 points. Now, when we're saying adaptive grid items, we're saying we don't actually care how many columns we have in our grid. It could be one column, like here. It could be 10 columns of a huge iPad. But minimum 250 points wide at every given time. And we're giving SwiftUI the freedom to be flexible here, to make them wider if needed, as long as they're that width there. The second change we want to make is down here with our for each code. Now, everything that's inside our scroll view right now, this actually just lays it out vertically, which is fine to begin with, but we want something more advanced right now. We want here to wrap this whole for each here inside another new view type called a lazy V grid, a lazy vertical grid. This creates grids of views, and you've got to tell it how you want your grid laid out and what should be inside the grid. Now for us, the grid layout is that new columns value we just made a moment ago. And what should be inside? Well, that's our for each code. So we can say directly inside a scroll view, I want to have a lazy V grid with the column layout being our columns. And then I'm going to take this whole for each chunk here and push it inside the lazy V grid. So the lazy V grid's been told, yeah, here's my columns, adaptive, at least this wide. And when it comes to each item, here's my for each of stuff. And the preview looks the same because our grid's automatically adapting it to make the best use of the space. But if you press the play button, you'll see something very, very different. You'll see our pictures spread out across a whole grid row. Let's find out in a second when it finishes building. There we go. And you get the same behavior as before. It still scrolls around like this. You can still tap to hear my dog woo at you. You go. But now lots of pictures can appear in the same row at the same time. Okay, that is all the code we're going to write in this project. But before we're done, I want to show you one important last thing to do with your code. And that is, of course, to customize the app settings that control its name, its accent color, and its icon. And these are all available in the sidebar under this My App settings thing here. So you press that, this whole window appears with various options to control your application. Now, in our case, we'll look at name, accent, color, and icon, but there are options more advanced below, like version number and team and capabilities and much more in here. Now, in our case, the name, this is the thing that we've shown when selecting a project in Swift Playgrounds, but also will be on the home screen if you ship your app to the App Store. In our case, I'll rename this thing to be Friend Face. That's the name of our application. Then press Done. Next is your app's accent color. This is used to color parts of the app that are interactive. So things like colored icons and button text and more, but also the placeholder icon, which you can see right now is a sort of raspberry red kind of color right now. Swift Playgrounds automatically chooses a random accent color for you, but you can change it. So I'll say I really want to have mine this sort of like royal blue color. Finally, you can change your app's icon to something else. Now there are a bunch of built-in icons to choose from which combine with your accent color to create something fairly unique. All these options across here. Alternatively, you can tap Custom to bring in a picture from your iPad, from photos or files, wherever you want to. In our case, and it's tempting to choose this nice dog because of the amazing wooing, but I think this sort of camera icon might work better for this particular project. When you press done, that is saved. You can go back to the home screen for Playgrounds and see your app is right there. Now, we've covered a lot in this tutorial, but really it's just the beginning. Swift Playgrounds can take pictures with the camera. It can read the user's location. It can authenticate with Face ID. It can read the microphone and so much more. Plus, SwiftUI itself is really packed with some incredible features, letting you create rich, powerful apps for iPhone, for iPad, also Apple Watch, Apple TV, and even Mac OS. In fact, Swift Playgrounds can share your project to your Mac. So you can switch over to Apple's Xcode instead. It's the much bigger tool that most professional iOS developers use. But all the Swift and SwiftUI you've learned here work just as well. Anyway, that's the end of the video. We've covered lots of ground. We've covered the basics of SwiftUI and modifiers. We've covered using list and navigation view. We've covered bringing in dynamic data with an array. We've covered importing pictures and audio using photos and voice memos. We've covered resizing images and rounding the edges. We've added buttons that trigger actions. We've imported Swift Playground written by someone else. We've laid out images as a grid rather than a list. And we've customized our app settings. That's a huge amount in one short video. Now, if you want to carry on learning Swift and SwiftUI, I have a huge free course that includes over 20 projects, plus quizzes to test your learning, plus answers, solutions, and so much more. It's called the 100 Days of SwiftUI. And like I said, it's completely free. It does use Xcode, but you'll find that all of it works great right here in Swift Playgrounds 4.2. To find out more, look at the URL on the screen right now and click that. It's called the 100 Days of SwiftUI and it's completely free online. I am so excited to look forward to seeing all the amazing things you are going to make with Swift Playgrounds. Send me a tweet on Twitter. It's my handle somewhere on the screen right now. Let me know what you think of it. Are you keen to start using it? Are there particular things you missed? Do you think it'll help build a whole new range of applications from new developers? Let me know on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to me here on YouTube. I make lots and lots more videos like this one, teaching you Swift, SwiftUI, and so much more. And you'll see my dogs too. They're in almost every video. I can't get rid of them. They're very, very keen to have dog treats. Anyway, thanks for following along. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time, folks.